So we all know what psychology is, right? It is the study of the mind and behavior. Well, psychology is really interesting as it has different disciplines that tackles a variety of topics. So today we are going to be discussing two branches of psychology that I would like to say are connected with one another. Today we are going to discuss developmental psychology and educational psychology. So, what is developmental psychology? Developmental psychology is a study of how and why human beings change over the course of their life. Basically, it is about human development. And when we talk about human growth, it is not just about the physical aspect, but it also talks about cognitive, social, intellectual, perceptual, and emotional growth. Not only does it study human growth, but it also looks into the biological and environmental influences that affects and shapes a person. Aside from the two influences, this discipline takes a look at factors such as cognitive development, gender development, psychosexual development, and sexual development. Have you ever wondered what professionals in developmental psychology do? Well, to name a few, they study the development of ethics and moral reasoning for both individuals and groups, how a person acquires their language and communication skills, and they also study the social and cultural influences on child development. An example of a study made by several universities is a study on teens and social media, and it focuses on how well-adjusted teens use social media in a more positive way than teens who experience depression, aggression, and behavioral issues. This study tackles that the level of safety that a child has when exposed to social media is dependent on the child more than the technology itself. Professionals in this field, like a lot of other fields, also do a lot of research. They particularly research social patterns, behavior, self-awareness, self-concept, and personality development, among the few. And they also assess individual problem-solving patterns, developmental disabilities, and the progression or regression of motor skills. Now, developmental psychology sounds really interesting, right? And there are actually a number of job opportunities available when you take this in college. You can work at a university where you can do research or teaching. You can also be in healthcare facilities, mental health clinics, and psychiatric institutions where you can help in assessing, evaluating, and treating people with developmental disabilities. You can also be a part of teen outreach programs or work in the home for the elderly. Now that we have learned about developmental psychology, let us now learn about educational psychology.
Did you learn a lot from developmental psychology? Well, you will learn a lot more about the branches of psychology. Let me tell you, what is educational psychology? Educational psychology is a study of learning, the process of learning and teaching. Interesting, right? Let me tell you more about it. Educational psychology has three disciplines: developmental psychology, behavioral psychology, and cognitive psychology. Educational psychologists tends to use different kinds of perspective when they try to help a child with a problem. The first perspective is behavioral perspective. It means they explain to a child on how their learning process is and how it begins and happens to them. Second perspective is developmental perspective. It is when the child develops new skills or acquires new skills or gains knowledge as they mature. This specific perspective also helps educators to create a new learning process for children and make new methods for certain age groups. Third perspective is the cognitive perspective. It is when the child's memories or believes his or her emotions to the child's learning process. It focuses on the understanding of the way of thinking of people, on how they remember, how they learn, how they process everything in their minds. This can also help to motivate the children on how they can remember and solve problems on their own. Lastly is the constructivist approach. It is how the children construct their knowledge on the social and cultural influences that are around them and that are adapt to them. It is also how it affects the learning process of a child. Are you curious what does an educational psychologist do? Actually, they try or find for a way to find for children or students that are struggling. They try to find for children that may need special attention, special care, extra help. They also counsel children if they have personal or family problems, and they also create new learning methods for students. example of a study of educational psychology was back in 2017, where a group of researchers conducted a study on fourth graders. They had two groups, Group A that had a better reading ability, Group B that had a poor reading ability. They did it by doing a reading test. When they put the two groups together, both of the groups had high reading test scores. But when they separated the two groups, the one with the poor reading ability had the lowest, and the one with the better reading ability had the highest. In conclusion of the researchers, they found out that the students get influenced by each other by their different experiences and indifferences because they adapt on each other. Because Group B sees Group A as a role model, so they tend to do better. When you study or become an educational psychologist, you have a lot of job opportunities out there. You can work in a school and be a school psychologist, a college counselor, an educational researcher, or be a teacher in a university, or be a university and school administrator. Now that you know a lot more about developmental psychology and educational psychology, what are the connections of the two?
Stated a few minutes ago, educational psychology uses developmental psychology as one of its disciplines. But let us look further on this, shall we? We know that developmental psychology deals with matters involving human development, and it's not just in the physical aspect, but also when it comes to cognitive, social, intellectual, perceptual, and emotional growth. And this is taken into account in the theory of child development. Now, theories of development provides a framework for understanding human growth and learning. And with these theories, one may be able to understand what motivates, affects, and influences a person's thoughts and behavior. So, you're probably wondering, how is this information on developmental psychology related to educational psychology? Because one of the duties of professionals in educational psychology is identifying things that may be deemed helpful with students' learning and creating learning materials and curriculums that will maximize learning, using theories in developmental psychology will be able to help professionals identify what motivates students and what makes their performance excel. And by identifying these factors, they will be able to apply this in their curriculums and how they will deal with students and how they will be able to aid students in their learning. And this is why developmental psychology and educational psychology are connected to one another. And that's it, guys. This concludes our discussion about developmental psychology and educational psychology. I hope you guys learned a lot today, and I hope this piques your interest in psychology. Bye!